Also, this morning, we've got queued up, I believe, our year-end review video. So, Mr. Chairman, if I can get that queued up, I think it's a very well-prepared video. I think we've got it queued up. Bear with us for just a minute. Maybe. So let's try this year in review video again, see if we can get it queued up. Here we go.
In February, the OTA formally introduced Access Oklahoma, its first long-range program.
Residents in East Norman are angry and frustrated, saying this turnpike expansion will ruin their roads and demolish their homes.
Now, there are close to, or actually more than hundreds of families and homes that could be impacted by this turnpike.
Hundreds of Norman residents shouting down the idea of a new turnpike coming into their neighborhood.
One Norman City Council member said there could be hundreds of homeowners forced off of their property because of this turnpike expansion.
To us, this was a punch in the guts.
More than 400 Norman and Cleveland County residents packed into a town hall Thursday to either learn about or speak down on a proposed expansion of the state turnpike. The proposed route for the south expansion, which spans from 35 in McLean County to the Kickapoo Turnpike in Oklahoma County. There's also the east to west corridor, which connects the expansion to Newcastle. Engineers attempted to answer questions. Still, the crowd celebrated the idea of killing the project.
The best case scenario is this turnpike gets stopped, correct?
Also,
I built my house to die in.
Yes, ma'am.
You couldn't offer me enough money to buy my house.
You can fight this. They have been beaten before.
We all moved out in the country to get away from the vehicles.
is it worth housing?
Sir.
Yes or no?
Sir.
Even if it doesn't take our homes, you got the turnpike going with all the noise.
My heart breaks for those, that some of those people's families have owned the ground for 80 or 100 years.
Tensions were high last night. Hundreds of angry residents yelling at engineers during a town hall meeting in Norman over the proposed turnpike expansion that will actually run through the Norman area.
You don't make no money. My property is it worth 25 minutes of the extra time?
Tonight, community members in Norman are uniting after hearing news of an Oklahoma Turnpike Authority project that could impact their homes.
84 families live in this neighborhood, and after hearing about a new OTA project, the community says they're fighting for their homes.
We're willing to fight for it.
Do what we can.
And do what we can, because we've worked too hard and it means too much for us to just walk away and let it go.
Somewhere between 600 and 800 homes are going to be destroyed by this. The only mistake that these people made is they chose the wrong place to call home.
Big pushback tonight against a proposed turnpike extension planned through Norman.
From City Hall up to leadership at the state capitol, lawmakers tell our Barry Mangold they either doubt or downright oppose this plan.
This closed-door decision-making process, it's not acceptable.
Rooftops. That's what they call us, is rooftops. That's all we are.
That's right. The expert that I spoke with says that the turnpike would threaten one of the state's most treasured wildlife sanctuaries, leading her to question why no environmental specialists were consulted before its path was planned. Even though nothing's been set in stone, proposals for the 6-lane highway have already been laid out and presented, despite the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority admitting they've not conducted any studies to evaluate potential impacts on the environment. How can you know what the best spot is and pick the best spot if you haven't done any studies to see how it might impact the environment?
More opposition tonight on plans to build a new turnpike in parts of Cleveland County.
The proposal today reminds Clark of a similar expansion project from 1999.
My understanding is it's the same concept that was first unveiled in 1999, which we said no to then, and we're going to say no to again now.
There's growing opposition to the state's new turnpike expansion. This week, a Norman group is launching a grassroots movement against the proposed path.
As Fox 25's Rebecca Pryor reports, that includes a new website and Facebook page.
PIKE Off OTA president Michael Nash says people have been reaching out left and right following the launch of this website and this Facebook page.
Setting the scene ahead of tonight's city council meeting here in Norman, this group of Oklahomans has come together with a clear message for OTA: back off.
If the OTA can do this here, there's no reason for them to not do it everywhere.
What we have to do is get the word out to the public and have everyone join us, not just in Norman.
It's the beginning of the end of the East Norman toll road. That's what's getting ready to happen tonight. Put it to rest permanently.
The Norman City Council joining members of the community in pushing back against plans to build new turnpikes in the city.
Multiple members of the city council tonight said that the planned construction of turnpikes has united Norman against the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority.
We're going to show the OTA and Governor Stitt what happens when you pick on Norman, especially when we're united.
Norman City leadership unanimously opposing the state's plan to build new turnpikes. Norman residents have banded together to come up with ways to stop the turnpike construction under the name PIKE Off OTA.
We're going for it. It's a shot, right? But we only need one shot to land.
Norman city leaders are taking a stand against the new Oklahoma Turnpike expansion. At tonight's city council meeting that's just now wrapping up, members unanimously passed a resolution rejecting the proposed path.
Dozens packing a town hall meeting, telling the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority to, quote, pike off and take their plans elsewhere.
Tonight, the Norman City Council actually passed a resolution against the expansion, praising the grassroots Pike Off movement for a job well done. But the group says this is just one victory and a long fight.
The effort to expand the Turnpike loop around Oklahoma City, south and west, through the Moore and Norman areas is a contentious issue.
I built my dream home to die, even for my kids. You know, I've been out there 18 years, and it's sad. It's a sad deal.
You don't attract businesses to the state of Oklahoma unless you're investing aggressively in infrastructure.
Do away with it. There's so many people. It's not a rooftop. There's people's homes. It's not a farmland. It's people's homes. People live out there.
I would assume that you would have at least an estimate of how many homes would be impacted.
No, we don't have an estimate. We haven't gone in there to look at that.
No, it's wrong. It's wrong. Not just for me, but for every one of the people, my neighbors down the street.
This was the scene inside the rotunda. Dozens of people holding signs and voicing their opposition to this road project that is part of Access Oklahoma. But some residents in Cleveland County want nothing to do with the expansion. Pan Groom organized today's rally because several of her neighbors could lose their home and property.
Standing in the way of that proposal, though, is an estimated 600 homes.
The Oklahoma Turnpike Authority's Access Oklahoma plans are destructive, callous, and backward-looking. To quote one of our board members, John Gifford, this plan is an assault on rural life and culture. It's an affront to individual freedom, and it threatens our land, our water, and our wildlife.
And I think everyone in this room that's here in support of stopping the turnpike understands and realizes the importance to buckle down, gird your loins for battle, as the Bible says, and take the mighty armor of God forward and try to say, put a brake on this whole project. We've had enough. And we've had enough of being trotted upon by politicians who don't think that we're smart enough to see through them and to understand who they are that are making the money from this type of a project. So to save 20 minutes, is it worth destroying over 600 properties? And I think everyone in this room knows the answer. It's not only no, it's hell no. Thank you.
This is not a
a Democratic issue. This is not a Republican issue. This is not a partisan issue. This is a people issue.
You said that you guys picked this path with how many homes would be impacted in mind. But if you have no idea, can't even estimate how many homes will be impacted, then how could you have considered that? How many homes do you think would be too many homes?
I don't think there is an estimate or there is a number for too many homes. We have to think beyond one city. We have to think beyond one household.
One of the main concerns Oklahomans have with the Access Oklahoma project is how many homes the new expansion plan would destroy. In an interview with Fox 25 yesterday, Oklahoma Turnpike officials were unable to answer that question. In fact, they claim they can't even estimate the impacts on private properties right now.
It does not serve what we're doing to go in there and count possibly impacted homes.
So OTA is never going to give an estimate. They're just going to tell people when they have to leave.
When we know who's going to be affected, then we will contact those individuals.
But he's not answering my question. I'm just an Oklahoma citizen whose home is being taken.
Outraged Oklahomans standing before transportation officials Tuesday, calling them to account for what they say is turning out to be a disastrous future plan for highway infrastructure and expansion in the state.
Why these routes? They make no economic sense. They make no environmental sense. The proposed routes are geologically destructive. The proposed routes are a disaster in terms of human impacts.
Opponents hoping their presence at Tuesday's meeting will at least help delay the program from moving forward before proper environmental, humanitarian, and economic studies are done.
OTA getting an earful on just how unhappy Norman is with the turnpike they say they didn't ask for.
This house is one of hundreds in the path of the new proposed turnpike that'll cut through Norman. Angry residents say they plan to continue to fight, and the fight won't be over until they win.
They occur only one place in the world.
The barite rose, better known as rose rocks, come in all shapes and sizes, and in 1968 were officially named the State Rock of Oklahoma.
We would love to preserve these for future generations because once we destroy them, they will never reform.
That's the way the turnpike has been building turnpikes since the early 50s, and it's worked really well.
There's been a lot of pushback over this turnpike that could go through the Norman area this morning. Lawmakers looking for answers.
But has received a lot of pushback from Cleveland County residents, even from the Norman City Council itself.
$5 billion turnpike expansion plan could potentially displace hundreds of residents.
Norman residents gathered at the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority meeting this morning, voicing their concerns about the expansion project. Residents spoke up from both the audience,
Where are the people in Oklahoma supposed to live?
as well as during scheduled public comment, citing both environmental and residential concerns. The OTA board said they appreciate the feedback and that they will continue to work with the public to minimize impact.
Yes, tonight the OTA apologized to the Norman Council for how this turnpike announcement unfolded, that they didn't first meet with the council before announcing it. And though the OTA took 3 hours of questions tonight, the council says they learned very little.
To blindside us like this and then act like you're playing nice is a load of crap, and I'm not down for it.
Norman City Council getting aggressive with the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority Tuesday night, frustrated that the agency has not actively included residents' input in their proposal for a new turnpike. Council demanded to know how many homes will be affected. Here's a response from OTA Deputy Director Joe E. Kelly.
We've been pressed on, can you give us an estimate of the number of homes? And we have said we can't possibly give an estimate when we don't know what the alignment is exactly.
They won't give us anything because they don't care.
Yeah, the outrage over the planned turnpike continues. Now Norman residents are pointing out that using eminent domain to build and operate toll roads goes against what the Republican Party campaigned on. The most recent version of the GOP's principles says, quote, "We oppose public-private partnerships and the use of eminent domain to build and operate toll roads and bridges."
We support a moratorium on the creation of additional turnpikes. How about that? This is the platform that Governor Stitt campaigned on to get elected. If we can't take someone at their word, what can we take them at?
And now Norman's mayor pleading the governor to take action.
Governor Stitt also has the power to stop it, so I'm calling on him to listen to Oklahomans and do what's right and save their homes.
Now, if the turnpike does get built, many businesses are in jeopardy of losing their property.
We begin tonight with Norman residents making their voices heard at the state capitol.
They're holding a rally against proposed turnpike that would cut through Norman.
So what we can do is to say no, 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 and hell no to this project.
They will be continuing their fight against the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority in any way they can.
Today, Cleveland County Commissioners will vote on a resolution involving a turnpike that would run right through Norman.
Well, today, commissioners will vote on a resolution to whether or not condemn the projected plan of that turnpike expansion that would run right through their county. Now, in today's resolution, Cleveland County Commissioners question the impact of the construction on things like properties, wildlife, and the watershed of Lake Thunderbird.
Cleveland County Commissioners today approve a resolution questioning the basis for the new turnpike proposed to run through the county.
Emotions running high at today's Cleveland County Commissioners meeting. The crowd that gathered in protest of the South Extension Turnpike holding signs saying stop the OTA.
This is the first meeting. I've been to 4 meetings already, down at the Capitol and everywhere. This is the first meeting that we were heard. I spoke to the governor. He shook my hand. I held his hand to try to explain to him what this is doing to us. He didn't care. But the OTA, when you look at them, they just look at you like, who cares? It's like they have no hearts.
County commissioners giving a big thumbs down to a planned turnpike extension there. It's the latest in what's becoming a real fight to keep the turnpike out of the county.
They're taking our homes that we built and want to live on the rest of our lives.
A packed house at the Cleveland County Board of County Commissioners meeting Monday afternoon.
The Oklahoma Turnpike Authority needs to stop its arrogant, belligerent, and antagonistic plans to shove unneeded and unwanted toll roads down the throats of Oklahoma citizens.
But after weeks in turmoil over the proposed turnpike expansion project, distressed residents finally feeling like they got a win.
It was really important to see the local support from our county commissioners.
A bill focused on expanding Oklahoma's turnpike system has become a lightning rod for lawmakers opposed to new toll roads in Norman.
Amendment to strike out Norman.
Norman Senator Mary Boren is preparing an amendment to House Bill 4088, which gives the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority the ability to expand the Kickapoo. Her amendment would remove the state's authority to build toll roads in parts of Cleveland County. Norman representatives tried the same thing in the House last month, only to have the amendments quickly voted down. Boren is hoping that this time more Republicans join her.
We have a value system statewide that is bipartisan to not just continue to build toll roads until we have a plan to pay off the ones that we've already built.
Cleveland County Commissioners vote no on a proposed turnpike expansion in Norman, saying they can't condone the state's plan.
Yeah, Norman Senator Mary Boren filed an amendment to that bill that would have pulled the Cleveland County construction off of the turnpike project list. However, late this afternoon, fellow Norman Senator and Transportation Committee Chairman Senator Rob Standridge pulled the entire bill off of the agenda.
Trouble with the turnpike again today as a Norman senator's effort to make a difference are stalled in the Capitol.
It's not what happened at the Capitol today that has many Norman residents upset. It's what didn't happen at all.
We tried to find out why Standridge, who represents the Norman area, would lay over Boren's amendment.
He told me that he was trying to work something out over on the House side, that he had some matters pending that he was trying to work out. He said that there's some inside baseball going on.
We talked to her and she said that you told her something along the lines of inside baseball in terms of maybe trying to keep something on the table for negotiations of another bill. Is there any truth to that?
Well, I don't know. Inside baseball. Yeah, I don't know. It's odd to tell a reporter a comment like inside baseball. But anyway, yeah, I'll just tell you, Wayne, in light of that comment, that, Chairman of Appropriations bill, any senator that serves in the Senate would know that that is a futile effort.
Well, why was the bill laid over then?
That's we all make decisions on which bills move forward and which don't. So I don't want to get into that at all. But I'll just say that, I've been asked that, and so I want to make sure that's clear.
So this letter would be put on letterhead and sent to the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority.
The Central Oklahoma Master Conservancy District Board voting Thursday night to send a letter to the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority concerning their proposed turnpike, stating they, quote, expect to be actively engaged partners in the process moving forward.
So the federal government requires certain evaluations when building something on their property. Evaluations of the environment, archaeology, geology, many different environment, in different assessments. So all we're stating is that we do have jurisdiction here, and you cannot cross BOR property, whether those are our pipeline easements, our flowage easements, or our real property, without conducting those assessments. And that is required by the federal government.
President Amanda Nairn emphasizing the magnitude of their responsibility as they provide quality drinking water to over 200,000 people in Cleveland and Oklahoma counties, not wanting construction to pollute the water.
Well, the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority faced a curious and at times furious crowd in Cleveland County over plans to build miles of new turnpikes. News 9's Barry Mangold's in the Noble area with their questions and answers from the OTA.
Thursday night's meeting was not a traditional town hall. More than a dozen engineers working on the Access Oklahoma project answered individual questions about the planned turnpikes. Some people, though, only came to voice opposition. An hour before doors even open, Lisa Meyer is handing out yard signs with a clear message.
We want to curtail the OTA. They're way too powerful.
More than 100 people packed into Noble High School Thursday night to hear directly from the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority, many pushing back against the threat of eminent domain. One of the planned routes runs from Noble to Newalla. Another runs towards Newcastle. OTA Deputy Director John E. Kelly says those routes are almost set in stone.
Unless there's something profound that we don't know about, it's probably going to be very close to the alignment that we're currently projecting.
They're not responsible to anybody because they're self-funding. And I don't understand how this is America. Every government is supposed to be responsive to the citizens, okay?
People are hearing from the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority right now about its contentious Access Oklahoma plan. The OTA is in Noble right now taking questions from the public about the plan. This is a live look outside the event. We'll recap it for you coming up later on tonight on News 9 at 10.
Yeah, questions centered around how many people will be displaced from their homes and businesses and why lawmakers weren't notified before the announcement, leading a Turnpike representative to admit the agency, quote, screwed up.
Do you know how many businesses and homes will be affected or taken out?
We do not have that number right now.
How is that information not part of the equation?
Organizers telling me they're not happy with this project. Oklahomans gathering in force to protest against the proposed turnpikes.
And it doesn't make any sense from a human impact. They said that they picked the route that had the least amount of human impact. That is a bold-faced lie. And yet they can't tell us a number of the houses. So they're either lying or they're incompetent, or maybe it's a little bit of both.
About 150 people were here tonight, awaiting their chance to finally directly ask the OTA if their home will be affected by the turnpike, hoping their uncertainty would be relieved. But everyone we talked to wasn't satisfied with the common response of, I don't know.
My home is in the path of the turnpike and is currently slated to be destroyed. Absolute shock and horror. My family is just stuck in this nightmare limbo for an unforeseen future where OTA has removed any power or choice or autonomy that my family had to make decisions for what we wanted to do with our own lives.
And both the City of Norman and Cleveland County Commissioners have opposed the turnpike plans.
The Oklahoma Turnpike Authority got grilled yesterday by residents who oppose its new expansion plan.
The Oklahoma Turnpike Authority is now admitting the plan they have for this turnpike expansion, while subject to change a little bit, is pretty much going to stick with the route that they have right now.
The Oklahoma Turnpike Authority is now saying that the plan for the turnpike expansion is not likely to change from the route study they have planned right now.
Another testy showdown tonight as the Turnpike Authority held its latest public meeting over its controversial expansion plans.
Tensions high at the Norman Central Library. The issue of right-of-way property acquisition at the forefront of resident Patrice Williams' concerns.
It's frustrating. People they find the property they want in the area they want, and then it's ripped out from under them. And it's heartbreaking.
My concerns are that my house, my home, where my family has lived for 50 plus years, on the house that my grandparents built, is going to be taken away, that our lives are going to be literally destroyed.
So has OTA completed any studies at all?
Not completed, as far as I'm aware.
See, and there's the other problem. You've got this route laid out and you haven't done a damn bit of studies. That's fast backwards, people.
The Oklahoma Turnpike Authority's $5 billion project to expand the Kickapoo Turnpike throughout the state has residents and property owners outraged.
I will no longer have neighbors living across the street from me. I will have empty spaces with a turnpike.
Tempers flare in Norman during another packed meeting on a proposed turnpike expansion.
Yeah, they got individual FaceTime with OTA engineers and right-of-way acquisition specialists. But when their most pressing questions couldn't be answered, they wondered, what's the point?
If we all band together and refuse your money and protect our properties, are you going to come in and forcibly incarcerate us and steal our land?
A fired-up crowd of at least 200 demanding clear and honest answers from the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority. The agency setting up tables at the Norman Public Library where concerned residents could ask OTA staff one-on-one questions about their proposed turnpike.
Like, what's going to happen to our water supply? What's going to happen to our watershed? What's going to happen to the economy of Norman when you wipe out 650 homes?
News 4 found that many residents felt their most pressing questions weren't being answered. Specific questions may be able to be answered in 6 to 8 months. As for now, they're still gathering info, maintaining that any displaced homes are making a sacrifice for, quote, the greater good of Oklahoma.
These OTA representatives, they have nothing to say to me. They look me in the eye, they say they're sorry, but they don't care. And they aren't going to do anything unless we, the people, stop them.
Not trying to be anti-progress at all, but also it does not need to be at the expense of people and their businesses, their livelihoods, and their homes.
OTA telling me in a statement today that they're obligated by the Oklahoma Open Records Act to release the amount that they're paying to individual landowners who might be affected by this planned turnpike expansion project.
The OTA is changing course. Earlier this month, the agency refused to hand over information showing how much it had previously paid for land that was eventually used for turnpikes. A reporter with CNHI Oklahoma, that's the parent company to 14 Oklahoma newspapers, asked for the information but was turned down. The agency claimed state law kept it from having to release critical financial data to the public.
And it was an absurd exemption for the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority to claim. And I'm glad that they finally realized that.
Now, the OTA has reversed its decision to keep those numbers under wraps. In a statement to News 4, the agency says, in part, it is the legal opinion of the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority that the Oklahoma Open Records Act obligates the agency to disclose the amount paid on individual real estate acquisition transactions.
It's the property owners that are the stakeholders, and they need real answers to real questions. People need to realize that it's the squeaky wheel that gets the grease. And if we all start squeaking at the same time, something's going to happen in our favor.
State Senator hosted a prayer vigil today over the proposed turnpike expansion. Senator Warren Hamilton led the vigil. The goal was to find strength through hope and meditation.
The Oklahoma Turnpike Authority is now facing a lawsuit over its proposed expansions in the state. That suit alleges the agency's current plans exceed its legal authority.
We really want the Supreme Court to come down and tell the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority no, because they've never been told no before.
A controversial Oklahoma Turnpike Authority project is hitting a temporary bump in the road tonight. A request for a line of credit to expand the turnpike network was approved, but with some conditions.
Today, as the OTA asked for approval on a $200 million line of credit at the Oklahoma Council of Bond Oversight meeting, a group called PIKE Off OTA made sure their voices were heard. Community members fearful of losing their homes to a new turnpike extension filling the meeting room.
Today is the first time that
there really has been some significant feedback that this state is listening and paying attention and cares.
Council members ultimately deciding that the OTA is approved for the line of credit, but under the conditions that the money can't be used for 3 different Access Oklahoma projects, while a lawsuit filed by PIKE off OTA is pending. Those on the other side of the lawsuit say they're finally being heard.
The council did exactly what it should have done.
Well, it's definitely a win. I don't think the OTA has ever had this much resistance to projects in the past, and we have thousands of people that have joined with PIKE off OTA.
Legal fight is now brewing over those controversial plans to build new turnpikes in Oklahoma.
A group of Oklahomans are now suing in an attempt to block the construction, but state officials are pushing forward anyway.
During today's meeting, the Council of Bond Oversight unanimously approving that $200 million line of credit for the Access Oklahoma Turnpike plan, except for those routes that are now pending litigation.
Norman resident Amy Serrato telling News 4 she and others have filed a lawsuit asking the courts to decide if OTA's turnpike plans for the Oklahoma City metro area, Norman, and down to Purcell are legal. The just filed lawsuit hampering the Turnpike Authority's efforts to move forward with their plans along those routes, even after the Council of Bond Oversight unanimously reviewed and approved $200 million in interim financing on Wednesday.
One family here in Noble, they own several properties and they've had for generations that now they stand to lose. The state says that's the price of progress.
I've been on the property since 1957. My dad was born on this property in 1932. His grandfather owned it prior to that.
Donna McCroy and her family have lived and farmed on this land for more than a century. Their family holding the deeds to these properties since 1919.
It's civil for now with them, but I made it very clear we aren't going quietly.
On February 22nd, Cleveland County residents learned about a turnpike extension that would potentially demolish hundreds of homes. Now, a lawsuit filed by Norman attorney Stan Ward alleges the OTA violated the Open Meetings Act leading up to the turnpike's announcement.
McIntyre Law Chopper 4 caught this message mowed into the grass. It says, no pike.
I really wanted the engineering groups to see it. When they put up their area photos on their project maps, I wanted it to say no pike right there, and they have to put it right there on their board for everyone to see.
Carter says the new turnpike would take out 15 homes per mile, more than any turnpike in Oklahoma history.
It's a disaster to the people that live here. It's a disaster.
So there have been 2 lawsuits. The first lawsuit is divided into 2 different routes. So first, the South Extension route, the one that goes by Lake Thunderbird. Basically, they're arguing that in the Oklahoma Turnpike Enabling Act, there are 35 locations where the OTA can build, and they're arguing that the South Extension isn't in those 35 locations. The other route is the east-west and the Tri-City connectors. So this one's a little bit more complicated. They're arguing that in 1987, whenever this overall project was passed, it was passed with a single bond issue or a single bond indenture, which means it can only be funded that first time around. The second lawsuit is basically an open records, is basically an open meetings issue. And so they're arguing that all of the agendas and documents leading up to the Access Oklahoma announcement weren't really, the average person couldn't read the document and say, oh, it's going to go in my backyard.
Hang your heads in shame. A special meeting of the OTA ending like many others today, with upset residents there to challenge the Access Oklahoma project.
Like a typical OTA playbook, they threw this on us at the last minute and jam-packed a 34-page agenda with a lot of information that was hard to digest within 24 hours. We have open meetings, we can sit and listen, but we can't ever talk to the OTA and give them our input. And so when they say to the media, oh, well, we've accepted public input, that's a lie. They're moving faster than they've ever moved before because they're panicked. They know PIKE off OTA's lawsuit is valid. They think that if they can steamroll the citizens and get all the money they need and get the engineering firms on board and do the work, that no one will have the guts to stop them.
This crane with the sign reading PIKE off OTA was placed outside of country superstar Toby Keith's home this evening, where a reported fundraiser for Governor Kevin Stitt's re-election was taking place.
The Turnpike Authority says that today's vote for approval ratifies their argument that the Turnpike is necessary, but upset residents say that they'll keep fighting.
They're supposed to be watching out for us. They're supposed to have my back, and they don't.
The fight over controversial turnpike plans not over.
I don't really see why the sudden rush from the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority.
Passed by a vote of 7-1.
The Transportation Commission approving the routes, allowing plans to move forward. Only one commissioner voting no, saying property rights are too important.
I want to move on to the Turnpike issue because I know that's been a thorn in the side for many folks out there in Norman. There's a lot being said on social media. We get the emails every day here at the station. How do you address folks that are afraid of their homes and their livelihood being ripped away from them?
We disagree. I'm not a fan of the Turnpike. I don't like the way that it's vivisecting Norman. It's going to bring us some more problems, but I think it's going to happen because the state is superior to the city and they can do what they need to do. If we move the north-south highway over to 48th Street between 48th and 60th, we would hit, I think, 6 homes that way instead of 160 or whatever homes. There are other paths to go that we can achieve the same thing for the OTA and us.
Tonight, folks in Norman meeting to decide what's next. News 4's Ashley Moss was at tonight's meeting. And Ashley, folks are upset about an empty commissioner seat, we understand.
They certainly are. They feel like the empty seat is hurting their fight, but they're not giving up hope. Many of those people who expect to be impacted by the proposed turnpike says the path forward now is education and information.
It is an uphill battle. We know this.
Days after a devastating decision by the Transportation Commission, the folks in Norman are planning their next move.
I will condemn your property and throw you out. So why no representation?
Many at the meeting upset over the Turnpike expansion plan. They say it will kill hundreds of homes and kill wildlife. And without a current District 3 Cleveland County Commissioner, they say they don't have anyone in government speaking for them.
Ward 5 Norman City Councilor Rashard Tortorello says that Oklahomans need to be more involved when it comes to seizing homes and property through eminent domain.
Our goal with both lawsuits is to get and do a constitutional amendment through an initiative petition to change how eminent domain is used.
Tortorello calling for a vote by the people for any project involving eminent domain. Attorney Rob Norman is saying the South Expansion Turnpike was never authorized by statute. He also argued the other 2 routes in question are no longer authorized.
We feel like that if the judges and the courts follow the law, that they will see the validity of our position.
The attorney calling the turnpike's impact on drinking water quality, the environment, and Oklahomans' homes unacceptable.
What we need is better traffic engineering. We don't need more roadways. We need to fix what we have.
Dr. Soretto, you heard Jessica Brown say their speculation by 2050 is that I-35 will be gridlock because there are not basically loops, which the turnpikes would be. How do you know it's not necessary?
Sure, they said that in the 90s when they tried to push these exact turnpike routes, well, actually 3 miles different routes in the 90s. And McCaleb, who used to be the Secretary of Transportation, said, Neil McCaleb said, Norman said they don't want it, we're not going to put it there. Well, all of a sudden they came back in 2022 and said, no, we're going to do it, but nothing has changed. They predicted that we would be at gridlock by 2019. We're less than 40% of what they predicted we would be. And their predictions of 180,000 cars on I-35 by 2019, and predictions are not always accurate, but if we took their same line, we wouldn't see that till 2080. So they've been grossly overstated.
Tonight, we're hearing that the city of Norman is looking at possible legal action against the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority over proposed turnpike expansions.
The OTA filed an action at the state Supreme Court to get approval for a bond. Norman wants to convince the court to say no. And the city even hired outside legal counsel to help with this. We'll be following any further action that the city takes in regards to this legal action.
Behind the scenes, the city of Norman working on a plan to take legal action against OTA. Council members say this is what city government is all about, showing support for residents.
They want their government to say that we are with you 1,000% and no strings attached. You know, whatever happens, win, lose, or draw, you know, we did this together and we did it as a town. Okay, if we win this thing, that's a big win. This will change how turnpikes are viewed not just in the state of Oklahoma, but maybe nationwide.
Opponents protesting controversial plans to build new turnpikes in Oklahoma.
They've made their frustrations heard today, loud and clear, demonstrating just feet away from an event benefiting Governor Kevin Stitt's re-election campaign at the Oklahoma Association of General Contractors. And as News 4's Nick Camper reports, many of the protesters are wondering if there was more to today's event than just a fundraiser for the governor's re-election bid.
This campaign event for the governor has been supported by the General Contractors Association for years. But these protesters out here, they're calling out the governor, saying that this event is an example of crony capitalism.
I think it's pretty clear who the governor works for. He works for people who give him large contributions.
Opponents of the planned turnpikes lined up outside of the General Contractors Association Tuesday to speak their minds about a fundraising event happening inside for Governor Kevin Stitt.
The governor's own platform says no more turnpikes. It also says no more eminent domain to build more toll roads. And so we're here to tell him he needs to stand on his platform.
They are here because this is how they know how to get paving contracts to support the governor and make great big multi-$1,000 donations to his campaign. So for them, this is business as usual.
Protesters came here today saying they want the governor to stand by his party platform, and they claim he is the only person that can stop this turnpike.
Your platform that you campaigned on says no more turnpikes.
The campaign that Governor Stitt campaigned on, the Republican Party platform, says no more turnpikes. It also says no more eminent domain to build more toll roads, and all we want him to do is stand on his own party platform.
A group of protesters known as PIKE Off OTA fighting a new battle, asking Governor Kevin Stitt to help end turnpike plans known as Access Oklahoma. The group cited the Oklahoma GOP website today and its stance on turnpikes. Now they ask the governor to stand by that platform.
It's really important to emphasize this is not a partisan issue. Corruption is a universal problem. It doesn't matter what party you're in. Corruption is bad. We need less of it in this state.
PIKE Off OTA Group is continuing their fight today against the Access Oklahoma Turnpike project. They rallied outside the Association of Oklahoma General Contractors, where there was a fundraising luncheon this afternoon for Governor Stitt. Fox 25's Katie Arata was there and tells us more.
PIKE Off OTA members are continuing to make their voices heard here today as they protest Governor Stitt's fundraising lunch, demanding he take action against the Access Oklahoma Turnpike plan.
The fundraising luncheon for Governor Stitt disrupted by PIKE Off OTA members who gathered outside of the building, calling on the governor to honor his political party by putting an end to the proposed Access Oklahoma project.
I'm out here because I think it's obscene that the paving contractors are hosting a $1,000 a plate fundraiser for the governor when they are planning this giant turnpike that no one needs or wants that will decimate the city of Norman and Southmore, including the water supply.
Protesters had this message for the governor.
Resign. We are tired of the corruption, tired of the cronyism. Now we have this environmental destruction about to happen. It's irreversible if you let it go through. He is not representing the people of Oklahoma. He's representing these special interests who have deep pockets and don't care about the harm that they cause ordinary citizens.
The Supreme Court could decide the fate of new turnpikes planned for Cleveland County. The Oklahoma Turnpike Authority and several Norman residents traded arguments on whether the project follows state law.
The OTA is asking the Supreme Court to recognize its authority to build those turnpikes and to, again, give it the green light to start planning. The attorney for the OTA said the agency has had the discretion to build these highways since the 80s and 90s. Multiple parties, including the city of Norman, however, argued today that state law doesn't allow for the highways. Some Norman residents say this Supreme Court decision could be a big check on the OTA's capabilities.
State law is state law. It says what it says and it means what it says, and somehow OTA wants to convince the Supreme Court that it doesn't mean what it says. Good luck.
I really feel like we're at a pivot point in the state with so many other corruption scandals. Like somebody has to stand up, whether it's citizens, attorneys, and say enough is enough.
The future of Norman, Oklahoma is what's at stake.
Can the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority build new turnpikes in Cleveland County?
They don't have discretion here.
Attorney Rob Norman represents PIKE Off OTA, an opposition group that formed when the plan was announced. He argued that the same laws applied back then and not now.
One bond issue, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 10, not 20, not bond issues issued 33 years apart.
An attorney for the city of Norman also challenged the planned south extension, which would run through East Norman by Lake Thunderbird.
This is really a separation of powers issue. OTA is trying to avoid the legislature and, more importantly, the 128,000 citizens of the city of Norman.
Citizens who fought this battle for months say after today,
I feel really confident.
with the city of Norman on their side, they say they'll continue to fight.
We were there on day one. Council 1,000% is behind all the citizens. We voted together for the first time, I think, in a long time, that we all agreed that this is a fight that was worth fighting.
Citizens argued the Turnpike plans are, quote, bogus, wrong, unnecessary, and unjustified. The attorney for the city of Norman said he felt this was an issue of power. OTA wouldn't comment today other than the arguments they presented to the court.
Oh, hey. Good day, all you Turnpike friends out there. Here, this is another attempt. Thank you for indulging me. This is my attempt again to get out my Monday message.
Well, ain't no bugs on me, and ain't no bugs on me. There may be bugs on some of your bugs, but ain't no bugs on me.
And Norman residents continue to battle for their homes as litigation issues continue against the OTA. I spoke with a member of PIKE Off OTA and his direct connection to the issue. This quiet, calming area is set to be the future home of a loud, busy highway. The new turnpike would destroy many homes, but Norman residents are not backing down without a fight.
We are working to fight the turnpike process.
Randy Carter has lived on his property for decades, but the turnpike threatens his long-standing home.
On where the turnpike for the southern extension going through Cleveland County, city of Norman, runs right through my living room right here.
Dr. Amy Serrato says the OTA gave her a chart outlining plans to increase toll prices by 10% next year, followed by a 6% increase every other year.
They're using fear and false data to justify an unnecessary transportation corridor that will destroy East Norman.
Lawmakers and opponents were at the Capitol today as the Senate weighed the need for more oversight to the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority. Ashley Moss is joining us now with the latest update. Ashley?
That's right, Kevin. One woman I spoke to today at the hearing told me her home is right in the path of construction for future turnpikes and that it feels like the OTA is trying to build what they want, where they want, when they want.
My husband actually started this business with his family, just had a vision that they'd be able to work together and produce something that would be good for our community and our environment. But you don't ever plan for your government to come and destroy your house.
And we've got a long history of successful property acquisition and working very closely and very carefully with property owners.
She and others gathered at the Capitol calling for more in-depth research and consideration. As if there's a forced exodus out of Norman to make way for the turnpikes, her family may have to go too.
Now, Darla is part of the grassroots group PIKE Off OTA, and I checked in with one of those organizers tonight who told me they were focused on today's presentations, but next they'll focus on getting some of that proposed legislation that they were talking about today in motion.
It's a new battle between the Turnpike Authority and PIKE Off OTA, and it all stems down to this. Does there need to be legislation to keep OTA accountable? Those opposed to the Turnpike also talked to the committee discussing their multiple legal challenges, plus what they call historical faults of OTA. They say the lack of public input, engineering research, financial practices, and taking property are major concerns of theirs.
So right now they're required to do no justification studies. They're required to do no engineering impact studies, no environmental studies.
Now they're asking for legislation to help pull back power and keep the Turnpike Authority accountable.
The battle over new turnpikes in Cleveland County could be decided now at the state capitol. Today, a Norman-based group pleaded pleaded with lawmakers to put more guardrails on the State Turnpike Authority.
And there are multiple ongoing lawsuits over the OTA's plan to build new turnpikes in Cleveland County, as well as a pending decision from the state Supreme Court. Now, the group PIKE Off OTA is making the argument to state lawmakers that the Turnpike Authority needs to be reined in.
Now to a Fox 23 investigation we've been telling you about for months. People who live in the Berry Hill area are upset that a section of road that's been free will now cost them.
We moved over here in 1968. We did not want a turnpike through here.
But plans change. Construction started in 2020, but this past March, when neighbors like Melissa Myers saw toll scanners go up on a certain section of the road,
that was the very last thing they did.
She and countless others were confused.
We were like, what's happening?
Confused because that section from I-44 to 41st Street has been open there for decades as a free-to-use, taxpayer-funded, two-lane portion of the future expressway.
Well, that section that was built in the past was a temporary connection.
That's not what they said. That is not what we've been told. And then here it is.
Melissa says they assumed tolls would only be added to those new sections. E. Kelly admits OTA did not initially tell the public where the toll scanners would be located. There was even an opportunity at a town hall attended by hundreds in February 2018.
In that presentation that we gave in 2018, we were still analyzing exactly where those locations were going to be.
I looked through public meeting records. The only mentions of toll scanner locations I could find that were presented were at meetings between the 5 agencies involved, one in November 2018 and the other in May 2019. Though open to the public, people rarely attend them.
That's the problem, is no transparency and no upfront of what's going on.
Fox 23 was there in April as hundreds of people voiced their frustrations at a community forum.
The main goal that we have is to eliminate the 51st to 41st.
They say having to pay a toll to get to 41st Street means they'll lose their only adequate and safe free access to their community, instead being forced to take side roads.
There's no lighting, there's no shoulders, there's no ditches.
OTA leaders tell me they did drivers a favor by not tolling you until after the 51st Street exit.
Just about as close to that exit as you can get. This Amazon warehouse that as of the day we are recording this is sitting totally empty and unused.
They're not going to ever have to pay unless they're having to go make a delivery, so they get to go to their work for free and travel.
I asked OTA, why not drop the toll between 51st and 41st and just make the rest of the tolls on the road a bit higher?
This particular segment, in order for this road to be here, this is how it had to be done.
He tells me the OTA got what's called a TIFIA loan from the federal government that required that section to be tolled. But people like Melissa and Frank want to know why they weren't told before that loan was taken out.
All the decisions were being made behind the scenes, a lot of them without our input.
Now state leaders have questions too. On September 7th, a state representative and state senator who both represent Berry Hill sent this letter to the Attorney General. In it, they explained the concerns and asked the AG to issue an opinion on if it's, quote, legal for an Oklahoma community's safest, most convenient, and free access road to be converted to a toll road.
I asked the city of Tulsa and Tulsa County for interviews about this project. The city said no. I thought I was going to interview County Commissioner Karen Keith. She's been heavily involved with this project, but an hour before I was set to talk to her, I received a voicemail from a then Assistant Tulsa County District Attorney.
I'm calling in to let you know that the interview you have scheduled with Commissioner Keith this morning is canceled, and I'm not really sure what that would do to help you.
I also submitted an open records request about 2 months ago to the city and county. I am still waiting to get those records.
Norman homeowners take their fight to keep turnpikes out of their backyard to the Supreme Court.
Property owners around Norman vowed a fight to the end to stop a turnpike expansion effort they say will not only take their homes, but hundreds of others. Those property owners are embroiled in lawsuits against the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority, a dispute that extends all the way to the state Supreme Court.
Rob Norman is an Oklahoma City-based attorney who represents PIKE Off OTA.
The sacrifice is not being made for the betterment of the state, is what I would say. The sacrifice they're asking people to make is to give up their individual liberty and to give up their homes and their businesses for a set of turnpikes that are legally not authorized. In other words, the OTA's efforts here violate the rule of law, violate representative democracy principles, and they're also not necessary.
We know that that we're asking people to make a sacrifice.
I have not been treated this badly by a government agency since I lived in Cuba in the 1990s. Like, that's the level of contempt that they have shown for us out here.
This time around, the OTA and the executive branch of Oklahoma's government are telling us what they're going to do. And too bad if we don't like it.
Richard LaBarth gave the judge some documents claiming the OTA changed two public meeting agendas before announcing their Turnpike project. Fox 25's David Chazanoff met with the lawyer this afternoon. So, David, what did you find out?
Well, guys, these allegations are part of an ongoing lawsuit against the OTA that argues they violated the state's Open Meeting Act. According to the documents LaBarth gave the Cleveland County District Court, the OTA made edits to their meeting agendas on January 25th and February 22nd. LaBarth says computer data shows the OTA altered their January 25th agenda around February 13th.
All we know is that there were modifications, and we can't understand why in the world one would do that.
He also claims there's evidence the OTA modified their February 22nd meeting agenda a day after.
Attorneys are now accusing the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority of fraud and tampering with evidence.
It is the newest development to an Open Meeting Act lawsuit against the OTA. Fox 25's David Chazanoff has been learning more about these allegations. So, David, what did you find out?
I spoke with Richard LaBarth, and he's once again accusing the OTA of changing their meeting agendas after announcing their Turnpike project. Last week, LaBarth gave the Cleveland County District Court some documents showing the OTA modified their January 25th and February 22nd agenda after those meetings happened.
We believe it was completely improper to in any way alter these agendas. The agendas should be left undisturbed because they are the evidence as to what notice was given to the public.
A new motion LaBarth filed this morning claims the original January 25th agenda had just 5 pages. The modified version has 47. Another illustration from LaBarth's motion says the February 22nd agenda had 5 pages, which then became 52 after some edits.
Attorneys in Cleveland County are accusing the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority of altering public documents.
Critical question posed by this lawsuit is, did the OTA describe the Access Oklahoma plan in public meetings before it was announced by the governor? Attorneys are now claiming the OTA altered the agendas of key meetings after they occurred. A group of more than 200 Cleveland County residents is asking a judge to upend the state's $5 billion plan to build new turnpikes. Attorney Richard LaBarth says their focus is on the Turnpike Authority commission meetings in January and February, during which a nearly $5 million contract was awarded to an engineering firm for Access Oklahoma. If you go to the OTA website now, you'll see that the agendas for January and February 2022 are 47 and 52 pages each, and they include lots of information on Access Oklahoma. The lawsuit claims these were not the agendas that were available before the actual meetings. Archived versions of the OTA website, which you can find on archive.org, show that these same agendas just a few months ago were only 5 pages each. LaBarth claims this shows that the OTA violated the State Open Meeting Act and is asking a judge to undo the contracts awarded during those meetings, which would halt the Access Oklahoma plan. This tees up a hearing in late November where both sides will make their arguments in front of a judge.
Have you spoken to anyone in East Norman about the Turnpike expansion on the campaign trail?
Absolutely.
I was pretty surprised. He said, "Oh yeah, I've talked to somebody." I just wanted to go, "Who?"
Can we move it? And that's the conversation we're having. Can we go a different route?
Protesters say their goal is to choose the candidate who will stop the proposed turnpike through Cleveland County. Governor Kevin Stitt wouldn't go that far, but said he wants to hear their concerns.
Discuss, if you would, please, sir, upholding the part of the Republican Party platform that says no more use of eminent domain to build more toll roads.
No more eminent domain.
Pages 20 and 21 of the Republican Party platform discuss no more turnpikes, and that also pledges no more use of eminent domain to build more toll roads.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, here's the deal. our legislature back in the 90s has to lay out loops around Oklahoma City, Tulsa. The Turnpike Authority or Department of Transportation cannot do anything without the legislature's approval. So what's going to happen over the next 15 to 20 years? They're going to finish loops around Oklahoma City, Tulsa, 6-lane all the way up to Tulsa on the Turnpike. And that's just part of the infrastructure needs that our citizens have. We can't have gridlock on I-35. And so when they lay those loops out, they're in the engineering process. And again, these are 20-year type plans, 30-year type plans. The legislature laid that out back in the 90s. And we're going to work and make sure that it disrupts as little of people as possible. But also they're letting people know where development's going to go, right? Where the development's going to go. So if they can move anything, and I think there's people obviously outside we all saw them protesting and that kind of thing. But that's just part of the infrastructure needs of a growing city and a growing state, staying ahead of the curve. We've got such an advantage in Oklahoma on work time, commutes, quality of life versus Dallas-Fort Worth. We're absolutely promoting that in Oklahoma, and we want it to be as least disruptive as possible. But also, the other option is not gridlock on I-35 for the next 50 years either. So again, these are 30-year type plans that started back in the 90s, and as we see growth, we've got to do it.
New developments in a lawsuit against the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority. A state transportation official claims she should not have to sit in for questioning amid allegations the OTA violated transparency laws.
A group of attorneys that have accused the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority of violating state transparency laws say getting folks to talk to them has been tough.
Everything that we've done in this case with discovery issues has been a struggle.
In a virtual court hearing Friday, companies, firms, and officials that have been subpoenaed argued they shouldn't have to sit for questioning. That includes the attorney for Jessica Brown. 5 months ago, Brown told News 9 that the rollout of the Access Oklahoma plan was transparent.
I'm not sure why anyone should have been surprised by it.
The plaintiffs in this case are arguing the opposite and are demanding Brown sit for questions.
This woman is at the heart of all this stuff. She is the dadgum director of strategic communications.
The judge said he will decide whether to enforce or throw out the subpoenas very soon.
There has been a round of briefs from the parties already. There's been argument in front of a referee already. And now the Supreme Court has asked for additional information.
That request is related to two core issues in a case where $500 million in bonds is at stake for Turnpike expansion. Attorney Rob Norman says the upcoming hearing is a rare opportunity where the parties are actually doing oral arguments before the justices themselves.
Of giving all parties a fair chance for their day in court. Our contention is they won't be able to build the turnpikes.
Their case consists of their attorneys saying we get to do whatever we want. We can put a turnpike wherever we want. Nobody has the right to impose any restrictions. And I think that rubs everybody in Oklahoma the wrong way.
Oh, hey, good evening, all you No Turnpike friends out there. It's time for my weekly Monday message.
The plan to add 3 extensions have been met with a lot of pushback, naturally, especially from the hundreds of families and business owners that can be forced from their property to make room for the new road. And now it seems like the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority might have expected the criticism.
Newly released information shows the OTA purchased more than 20 domain names just weeks before announcing the expansion. Most of those website addresses containing negative terms about the project.
This information is from an email presented in a deposition Wednesday for one of the Turnpike lawsuits. OTA presumably asking an outside PR firm to snag 23 domain names before potential opponents of the project could use them.
StopAccessOklahoma.com, StopAccess.com, NoAccessOklahoma.com, StopTheLoop.com. Snapping up all conceivable names that any opponent might want to try to use.
The message obtained by News 4 and dated February 7th shows a request from Oklahoma Transportation to an outside PR firm to purchase more than 20 domain names.
And we think that this is very strong evidence of the OTA's willfulness in executing their secret plan.
Turnpike opponents are calling this a bombshell of an email, saying it's clear evidence of the agency's attempt to suppress any public opposition to the Access Oklahoma project days before it was even announced.
PIKE.com.
Tanner, a web developer and part of the PIKE Up OTA group, says it's not unusual to buy domains similar to your own.
But to sit out there and buy up your oppositions, it shows definite intent that they didn't want any kind of pushback on this project.
The Oklahoma Turnpike Authority squared off against a legal team representing hundreds of angry and worried property owners. This went on in Cleveland County courtroom.
Well, today's a big deal.
The Oklahoma Turnpike Authority and more than 200 property owners continuing to clash over the proposed Access Oklahoma project.
Everybody in transportation in the whole country is watching what's happening in Oklahoma right now.
A lot of people have lived out there for a long time, and that's their vision of where they want to have their forever home. They want to keep it under wraps. They made that very clear.
Adding the OTA, quote, played games with the agendas and that the items were, quote, materially obscure and deceptively worded. For example, item 884 from the January 25th meeting talks about finances for certain turnpike projects, but is not specific on what those projects were. On Monday, the Cleveland County judge heard arguments from both sides for about 3 hours.
The Norman residents suing the OTA say the authority hid plans about turnpike expansions in the state. They say this helped the OTA build support among politicians, but harmed homeowners by withholding information.
The willful deception, the intentionally misleading agendas, the concealing of all aspects of this program.
That was Tassie Hirschfeld, one of the Norman residents, saying the OTA wasn't upfront with Oklahomans with its plans to expand turnpikes and possibly seize residents' property to do it.
Oh, I'm so proud of our legal team. I thought they made the case succinctly, clearly, and with outstanding evidence.
Today, the state Supreme Court will decide the future of the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority's Turnpike expansion plan. The OTA will request permission from the court to issue $500 million in bonds to help fund the project. The ruling will also consider the rest of the Access Oklahoma plan, which would reconstruct and widen more than 100 miles, in addition to adding 53 miles of new routes by 2037. That's expected to cost $5 billion. The hearing starts at 10 this morning.
The Supreme Court is responsible for both the validation of the routes and the bonds to build the roads. But opponents, specifically of the southern extension of the Turnpike through Cleveland County, say they're not legal.
The words of the statute don't come close to describing a northbound road from Purcell to Norman. They describe an eastbound road that starts in the vicinity of Tuttle and ends in the vicinity of Norman.
The argument was pretty clear that the state statute does not allow or authorize this route.
The fate of whether the state can build 3 new turnpikes in the OKC Metro now rests with the state Supreme Court. Today, justices heard from the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority and also protesters making their voices heard. Our Barry Mangold is here with reaction from both sides tonight.
Carl, approval from the state Supreme Court will be vital for the OTA before they can move forward with designing 3 new turnpikes. However, some of the questions we heard from the justices gave protesters confidence as we wait for a decision.
Basically, the authorizations all provide for
The Oklahoma Turnpike Authority's plan to build 3 new toll roads in Oklahoma and Cleveland counties now in the hands of the Oklahoma Supreme Court.
I feel it went as well as it could have gone.
Attorney Rob Norman represents PIKE OTA, a group protesting the state project. He argued to the court that state lawmakers haven't authorized the new toll roads.
Their quest to build these 3 turnpikes is unlawful under the Turnpike Enabling Act.
Meanwhile, the OTA says their authority stems from legislative action in the late 1980s and early 90s. While talking to the OTA's attorney, Justice Dana Keene compared the agency's use of that authority to building a wagon over multiple decades.
From here on out, then the Turnpike Authority can issue as many bond series as they want for as many spurs as they want, because you've satisfied the front part of building the wagon and you don't have to follow the one issue for the back half.
That's exactly right, Your Honor.
That line of questioning by the justice bodes well for the protesters, according to a Norman City Council member.
Today showed that the judges agreed with us in part, and hopefully they will rule the same way, that you can't use vagueness in legislative statute to get your way.
There's no telling exactly when the Oklahoma Supreme Court will issue an opinion on this. An OTA spokesperson says the ruling will provide, quote, clarity and finality to their plans to build the new turnpikes. Barry Mangold, Oklahoma's Own, News 9.
The controversial turnpike expansion that the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority has been pushing for is getting more pushback.
They have to bundle all 4 of these turnpikes together. And the OTA has tried to backtrack and say, well, we only had to do that the first time. But the statute doesn't say we only had to do that the first time.
Robert Norman is the lawyer for PIKE, the group that opposes the turnpike expansion. He argues that the money cannot be awarded to the authority because that's not how the law is written. Norman says in 2016 that money was approved because there were no challenges to the law.
If they don't go to the Supreme Court, they're going to have to deal with multiple lawsuits over their bond issue. So when they get that sense of determined opposition for whatever reason, I think they go to the courts.
The Oklahoma Turnpike Authority's plan for their expanded turnpike had oral arguments heard today at the Supreme Court of Oklahoma. I spoke with people from PIKE OTA who are against this expansion to hear their thoughts on the hearings today. The future of the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority's turnpike expansion plan is in the hands of the Supreme Court.
This was a great opportunity for us. We take it as a positive that they see and take the case seriously enough to have done it, and we feel like we did well today.
I think all Oklahomans need to know that the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority can right now build wherever, whenever, and whatever they want, no matter if the road is actually justified.
We firmly believe and have hopefully convinced the court that all 3 of these new turnpikes in Access Oklahoma are legally unauthorized, and hopefully that is the ruling we will get out of the court.
The ruling also considered the rest of the Access Oklahoma plan.
I was very encouraged by the questions by the justices and how that they were wanting to look at the text and that they were wanting to look at the text and make sure that the law is followed. And that's really all that the landowners wanted. It was for the law to be followed. See the community come together and pool their resources to hire lawyers to show up at court and make sure that the law is followed, that is designed to protect them, is very encouraging. And I think the lawyers that showed up today on behalf of PIKE OTA they did an excellent job.
I do believe they have the right to take anyone's house. So our struggle is for everyone, and I really hope that people recognize that.
A judge is expected to rule soon in a lawsuit that could make or break new turnpike plans in Oklahoma. More than 240 Cleveland County residents say the OTA violated state transparency laws before it announced the $5 billion Access Oklahoma plan. Residents have asked the court to invalidate certain OTA contracts while the agency is asking for the lawsuit to be thrown out. If neither request is granted, the case will go to trial in December. The Access Oklahoma plan is also up before the state Supreme Court. The court heard arguments earlier this week from the OTA and from protesters. We're now awaiting a decision in that case as well.
Since the city of Norman is engaged in legal actions, started prior to me being to my election as the mayor. They can't negotiate with us. When the city's lawsuit is decided, we must negotiate with the OTA for overpasses so we can provide fire and police services, all kinds of water well relocation, different things like that. We have things to talk about. We have things to plan about. We have to enter into discussions with them. And yes, it's bone-crushingly sad that these people are going to lose their house. But the fact of the matter is that there are a lot of people here in Norman who are not affected by the turnpike. And those persons are also persons that the mayor needs to be working for. So we have to enter into negotiations with them and do the best we can for the city of Norman as a whole. There's also my favorite group. The final group in this room is you guys, the growth and economic prosperity guys. You guys are taking a holistic approach to looking at what Norman is. We see generational opportunities that are quickly becoming apparent for Norman. This group brings capital. This group brings non-industrial or non-institutional development to Norman. These are jobs, entertainment venues, more housing, They bring the ability for Norman to remain a distinct entity inside the Oklahoma City MSA. We bring excellence as evidenced in this beautiful hotel. Excellence in spite of a city council that has led this owner of this place, as Chuck mentioned. They held him hostage for 14 months and cost them an additional $600,000 because they didn't make decisions quickly. The same council did the same with Northern Regional Hospital, and that cost us $30 million. That's a lot of money for a public entity. As I grapple with these groups, I must say that it is a daunting task, and I needed your help to get elected as a mayor. I also need your help to transform Norman.
And we begin tonight here at 6 o'clock with explosive news on the plan to build more turnpikes through Cleveland County.
Within the last 90 minutes, a judge ruling the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority violated state transparency laws when it awarded contracts.
The OTA's plan to build 3 new turnpikes, including one right here along Indian Hills Road, was halted by Thursday's ruling. This ruling effectively sends the OTA back to square one of planning the Access Oklahoma project. Special Judge Timothy Olson ruled that the OTA willfully violated the State Open Meeting Act, saying the agency did not adequately describe the project in meeting agendas before it was announced to the public earlier this year. Back in January and February, the OTA awarded a contract to an engineering firm to begin design work on the projects. Judge Olson has deemed that contract and any other action related to Access Oklahoma during those meetings as invalid. The judge went as far as saying the OTA's actions in question were the opposite of what is required by the State Open Meeting Act. The group of Cleveland County residents who filed this lawsuit say this is a big win for transparency in government. And now it is important to note that this ruling is separate from the Supreme Court case right now where the OTA is seeking authorization to build new turnpikes. We'll have more on this ruling, the OTA's reaction, and what's next for Access Oklahoma tonight at 10.
The Oklahoma Turnpike Authority's $5 billion plan that included building new turnpikes in Cleveland County is now upended.
A judge ruled the OTA willfully violated state transparency laws, sending the Access Oklahoma project back to square one.
1, 2, 3. A group that filed a lawsuit against the State Turnpike Authority celebrating Thursday after a judge ruled that the agency willfully violated transparency laws.
Hopefully it sends the right message to all state agencies, not just the OTA. But the citizens of this state need to be informed and advised of what's taking place that affects them on a daily basis.
Their lawsuit focused on OTA board meetings in January and February when the agency awarded millions in engineering contracts for the $5 billion Access Oklahoma plan. Judge Timothy Olson wrote, "There is no reference to the Access Oklahoma program in the agendas," adding that the agendas clearly do not comply with the Open Meetings Act. As a result, those contracts are invalid.
A Cleveland County judge ruled this afternoon the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority violated the Open Meeting Act when they announced their $5 billion expansion plans.
Now the attorneys I spoke with, they're happy and excited about what this could mean for Oklahoma's future moving forward. On Thursday, a Cleveland County judge ruled the OTA didn't give people enough notice about their 15-year Turnpike expansion project.
And there was a lot of secrecy that was involved in this whole thing. There were a number of people that knew, but not any of the residents whose property was impacted by this decision were given notice.
The judge determined there was no reference to the Access Oklahoma project or any Kickapoo extension in any of the agendas for December 7th, 2021, January 25th, and February 22nd of this year. Court documents say that anything the OTA did at their January 25th or February 22nd meetings related to Access Oklahoma are invalid.
So if the Turnpike Authority wishes to attempt things again, they're going to have to do so correctly from the start with an opportunity for meaningful public notice and discourse.
And we have that full interview, the OTA's entire statement, as well as this 11-page court ruling on our website right now. That's okcfox.com. Reporting live in Oklahoma City, David Chazanoff, Fox 25 News.
This is Capital Insider, taking you inside politics, policy, and government in Oklahoma. I'm Dick Pryor with Quorum Call publisher Sean Ashley. Sean, let's start with the latest on the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority's $5 billion Access Oklahoma Turnpike project, which includes efforts to expand turnpikes in central Oklahoma. The Turnpike Authority's actions in approving the plan were challenged in Cleveland County District Court. What did the judge determine?
Seminole County District Judge Timothy Olson, who presided over the case, ruled Thursday that the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority violated the Open Meeting Act twice in its posting of agenda items related to the Access Oklahoma Turnpike plan. Olson noted the Open Meeting Act requires agenda items to be plainly worded and directly state the purpose of the meeting, and that the Turnpike Authority knew the specifics of the plan in great detail. But he wrote, "The agendas for the January 25th and February 26th meetings contain nothing referencing the plan, Access Oklahoma, or the proposed routes, as required by the Open Meeting Act." And he later added, "The OTA's violations meet the definition of willful."
A victory for those who oppose Access Oklahoma. They say 11 turnpikes in the state is more than enough, and in order for OTA to construct any more, they'll have to do so with the voices of the public in their ear. Discussing what comes next. That's what the Turnpike Authority says their plan is now after a recent lawsuit didn't go in their favor. But they say the Access Oklahoma project is still in the works.
I think that we've gone through what we believe is appropriate to progress this Access Oklahoma program.
A district court ruling last week determined OTA violated the Open Meetings Act in January and February of this year. In those violated meetings, the Turnpike Authority approved several contracts for the Access Oklahoma project. Now those contracts could be invalid. OTA officials say they're looking into that to see if they need to have those approved again before moving forward.
Oh, there ain't no bugs on me. There ain't no bugs on me. There may be bugs on some of you mugs, but there ain't no bugs on me.